Now, we do love having him here on the show. It is, of course, our official car correspondent, Tim Barnes Clay. Hi, Tim.
Gareth, hi. Happy 2026 to you.
Yes, when did that happen? And you said an interesting fact that 96 is now 30 years ago.
Yeah, and the reason I'm kind of reeling from that is because 1996 was the first year that I had my first ever press car to test, which kind of now makes me feel really old.
What was it, that car?
It was a Nissan Primera. Do you remember those?
Do you remember those? Wow. I think now everybody will be frantically searching a picture of that because you'll know the name, but you may not necessarily remember what it looks like until you go and have a look and you'll go, oh, yeah, I remember those.
And do you know what? It sounds really old when I say that was on an N-Reg, which if you ever see an N-Reg now, if there are any left on the road, they're kind of pretty old looking things and quite poorly. But that I loved. It was a metallic blue Primera. I loved it. And I was so proud of myself at the very tender age of, well, 20 something to have a car to test for a cable TV channel. I'd been so naive up to that point. I didn't know you could actually have cars to test then, and so that was a great year. So yeah, 30 years on, I feel like someone's put me in some kind of weird time tunnel and hit the fast forward button.
Well, you did mention about reg plates. To be honest with you, since the new system, but I say new system, I bet that's about 20 years old now. But for me, I stopped knowing how old a car was when the first letter of the plate wasn't an A, B, C, D and it went up alphabetically. I've no
That's
idea where we're up to now.
That's right. It became quite confusing for a lot of people. So you knew where you were. So I remember the first time round when it was at the end of the registration plate. So, my dad had like a Y-Reg Cortina that was 1982. And I remember then the letter went to the beginning of the number plate. So it was an A-Reg, and I think that kicked in 83. And so then when it got to the end of that, when we got to the Y, which I think would have been about 2001, it then became confusing for a lot of people because it then became 51,
Yeah.
which was September of '01. And then in 2002, in March, that became the '02 reg. And then in the September, the '52 reg. And then it continues until you get to 60, 62, 10 years later, 72, another 10 years later. And now here we are at, where are we? 2026. So we're now about to, in March, have a 26 plate.
The fact that even you're having to think deeply about this isn't much hope for the rest of us because you lost me talking about your dad's rest plate and the last letter of it. I did think about you actually a few days ago because we drove past the Renault garage and there with all the bright lights, they had the electric Renault 5 and I thought, yeah, we've got Tim on the show again soon. Now, this is kind of old news, isn't it? This again, I'm highlighting how out of touch I am with motoring, but this was the car of the year for a few years. If you don't know, it's like a traditional 90s Renault 5, but it's electric. And you've actually driven one of these, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, when I say it's old news, I mean, these things are still awesome. I drove one in February last year and was very privileged to do so. I had to go down to the Renault's HQ down south to get behind the wheel. But you get some that are actually very similar to the color of the wall behind you. So you get that kind of lovely sort of neon green effect, and which works so well on the Renault 5. And then you get yellow, and it's just one of those cars that I love because I had a Renault 5 back in the day, an old one. I mean, it was old when I had it. I think it was about a 1976 job. And now, of course, it looks so similar to the traditional shape of that Renault 5, probably because car designers my age or younger are kind of remembering how these classic cars now look to them. And it kind of makes you feel all fuzzy and warm inside when, I don't know, your dad might have had one, your mum might have had one, a neighbor might have had one. And suddenly you think, you know what? They evoke such lovely feelings. Why don't we go and design one that looks the same as that, but with the modern engine, which is now, as you said, often electrified or purely electric? And that's what the Renault 5 is. Yeah, a really great, awesome, small EV.
And I did say to my wife as we drove past, I said, that's the car I would have if I hadn't married you and if I hadn't got children. And I'm not
And
quite sure how she took that, to be honest. It was almost like I was saying, I didn't mean it to come out sounding like a regret because, of course, I don't. But it was those kind of cars, and you'll know exactly how I mean. It's like a car where you've either hit that age where your kids have left home and you've got a few quid and you know it's just going to be you and the wife, or you haven't got children. It's not really known for being a family car, is it?
not at all. And it's funny. It's like as you say, it's like Happy New Year, wife. Um, if I hadn't met you or had the kids, this is what I'd have. No, I know what you mean. It's like
This is
I,
what you
I,
could
I,
have
te
had.
I tend to say these things and kind of go, but kind of not in that context, you know. But it's the kind of car that what you mean you'd have if I had the money and uh I don't know the time maybe even to research as many cars as I could to buy myself. It's different when you're working reviewing and testing cars, but when it actually comes to pulling the trigger yourself on spending something, often as you know with kids and what have you, you know, you think, oh, I'd love to get that new car, but the washing machine's blown up.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. There's always something you can put your money towards. And yes, if you had the money and still have your kids and your wife, I would still get that car if I had the money, I keep saying. Because actually it's not that expensive, but it's a real treat, isn't it? And it's electric, and that's the other thing. If you made that your main car, you'd have to really commit to going down the EV or electric vehicle route.
Which seems like, and this is what we call in the industry a professional segue, it seems like that is what China are doing. Because tell us about this. There's quite. And off air, we were saying that it was about Japanese cars in the 90s. I like that we can sort of reminisce about this, and everybody was buying the Japanese cars. But now there's been an influx of Chinese cars, which I've read, I've watched. They seem to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's a funny one because you're right. Certainly, Japanese cars. I mean, they're still obviously here, with the likes of Toyota and Subaru. But yeah, I mean, I suppose winding back 20 years prior to the 90s, say the early 70s, um, and the mid 70s, I remember neighbours having Datsuns, and then a bit later on Nissans, and quite, really, really, really early on in my life, I remember people not quite knowing what this sort of invasion of Japanese cars was all about. So if someone had a Datsun, it was a bit like, oh, my dad had a Hillman Avenger. People were still buying, Austin Princesses a bit later on in the 70s. Ford, even though it's American, Ford was the go-to as well, wasn't it? So was Vauxhall. So suddenly, people were seeing these Datsuns and what have you in people's driveways, and it's a bit. If you wind right the way through to now, it's a little bit similar. Where in the last just a few years, 2, 3 years, really, these Chinese cars have started to hit thick and fast to the UK shores. So, we're talking about some quite odd names. So we're talking about BYD, as we said off air. That actually stands for Build Your Dreams. And when the first BYDs came out, they actually did have Build Your Dreams across the tailgate, which I don't know whether it's a cost saving measure or what, but they've now shortened it to BYD. And why not? It's a bit like BMW or Audi or whatever. A lot of the time, all you need to see is either the logo or a very, very short name somewhere on the car's body to know what it is. But also, you've got, for instance, here's another brand, Cherry, but it isn't spelt with a double R. It's spelt with one R. And that's derived. When I spoke to some Chinese people about this who were from that manufacturer, they said it was sort of an anglicized version of the word cheery. They wanted people to feel happy driving their cars. That's what it's come from. And so I had a Cherry Tiggo 8 over Christmas. So again, that's a slightly strange name to some people, but Cherry has been around in other parts of the world for ages. So my sister-in-law came over from Australia a year or so ago and said, "Why are you going to a Cherry event? That's no big deal, is it? Because they're over here in Australia and have been for a while." I said, "Well, it's a big deal here." And in the last year or so, Cherry actually is the umbrella brand for some other brands that are out that are Chinese also. So you may have seen cars called Omoda. You may have seen cars called JQ. And all of these are built and made by Chery. But just to confuse matters, Chery also has cars out in its own name as well. So there are just so many cars, and also they are one of the fastest selling cars, JQ and Omoda. They're just selling like hotcakes. I think one of the reasons for this is that they look great. JQ and Omoda almost look a bit mini Range Rover-ish, and people like that look. But also things like the Cherry Tiggo 8 that I had as a test car over Christmas for the family. That's a seven-seater, so it's great if you've got a family, especially if you have extended family coming to stay, or you need to put a couple of the kids in the third row of seats. But these cars are actually really quite cheap, but they've got all the features often that you'll get in some of the traditional German brands, the Fords of this world, the Vauxhalls of this world, the Peugeots, you name it. So there's a real competition now, Gareth, when it comes to cars and brands, and it's a whole different playing field out there, especially if you're a customer. You've got a big choice of brands now and a different choice.
And it's not just the new brands coming through, because the Volvo XC90 is one that we were planning on talking about. And again, it's one of those cars that I want our listeners and our viewers to go and have a quick look at, because you'll see it and you'll go, ah, yeah. I guess there's those classic makes, and you can call Volvo a classic manufacturer, and Audi. So let's just run through quickly, because the Audi A5, and you've also been driving Volvo as well. Tell us about this.
Yeah, honestly, the Volvo, it's a great car. The Volvo XC90, it's a big, big, big SUV, but it's a seven-seater, so fantastic if you have quite a big family. But also because we've had quite a cold snap of late, unsurprisingly, I guess, for the UK in January, um, it feels like a really safe car because you've got all-wheel drive. And it just grips slightly better. It just gives you that extra bit of confidence if you're going through a bit of slush or whatever. Mind you, whether you're in four-wheel drive or whether you have a two-wheel drive car, if you hit a patch of black ice, you're still going to be in trouble if you're driving like a bit of a loon. You've still got to take care whatever you're in. But the Volvo, what a fantastic car. It looks great. Apart from when you go to a multi-story car park, you might find it's a little bit too big, but then that's another story. That just adds stress, I think, anyway, going into multi-story car parks these days. But the Volvo, solidly built, luxurious inside. The one I had came with cream leather. Again, way out of my budget. But you get loads of used Volvo XC90s, bulletproof, really lovely luxury car. And you've got that kind of Scandinavian cool about them and the way they're designed inside. Um, and I guess that for some people, and I'm not ruling out mums when I say this, but I'm only saying this because I'm a dad, and I know you're a dad. But what I say is anybody, no matter the gender, that feels they're selling out because they've got kids and have to be sensible, and they go, I still don't want to let that bit of me go that used to like sporty cars. You don't need to, because the Audi A5 you mentioned, it's a really lovely rakish coupe kind of look of a car. It's German. It's got those four rings on the front, that most people now go, that's an Audi. I mean, that's some clever marketing when all you got to do is look at four rings and know exactly what that brand is. Again, built absolutely brilliantly, screwed together inside perfectly. It's so, I don't know, just sporty looking. And I know this sounds really shallow, but it has got a vibe about it. It's got a good image that kind of says you've done well, whatever that means in life. But it also means that, I don't know, it just makes you feel good, makes me feel good. I've got one right now that I'm testing, and just everything about it, like from the light bars at the back that span the whole width of the boot to the automatic transmission that is just seamless. Because I've got to an age now, Gareth, I think we might have touched upon this a few months ago, but I've got to an age now where if I don't have to drive a car with a clutch and a gear stick, I won't. I like an automatic car.
Next, it'll be driving gloves and potentially a driving cap.
Well, listen,
Tim
the
is just
driving
around the
cap I know
corner.
you've got on, and I've got the specs on the head as well. That's all I
Together,
need.
we're a winning team. So, what I want to do is, you've you've come at the right time because I'm going to give you £50,000, Tim. But you need to spend it on either a car by BYD, either a Cherry, a Volvo, or an Audi. Which you going for this month's tip?
This month, I would go for an Audi. I have actually owned an Audi, so this isn't just fantasy. I have owned one a long time ago. It was an A4 Avant, which means an estate, and that was when I had one child. I now have three, and that's why I haven't got an Audi anymore because I can't afford one. But if I had the cash to splash, an Audi I'd go for, followed by, if I can say it, the Volvo, and then yes, the BYD.
Tim, always a pleasure, and we're definitely going to have you on now each and every month. There's not going to be a 6 month period where we just let you loose in the wilderness. We're going to have you back on next month. Always a pleasure, and thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Gareth. Pleasure. Brilliant.